Good evening, everyone. We're back. I'm a little late. I know it's 7:02. 7:02 my time. But welcome everyone back for Bible study. We're going to go back and we're going to do Hebrews chapter 10. So if everyone can flip to Hebrews chapter 10. Sorry about the technical difficulties. It looks like we had problems with I had problems with the camcorder. Hopefully I'm a lot more winded today. You can listen to my voice. You can tell if I'm having it rough or not. So we're gonna read chapters 1 through 18. Chapters 1 through 18, and that will continue the section on Christ's fulfillment of the promise. And then we're going to go over certain verses. Okay. Yeah, I know. I got to get a new laptop. We're having issues with that. Okay. Is everyone at Hebrews chapter 10? Okay. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sin every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls of goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he saith, Sacrifice the offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast had no pleasure. Then said I, Lo, I come. In the volume of the book it is written of me, to do thy will, O God. Above when he said, Sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offerings of sin thou wouldest not, neither hadst pleasure there, which are offered by the law. Then said he, Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second, by the which we will which we by the which will we are sacrificed to the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins, forever sat down on the right hand of God, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering they have perfected forever them that are sanctified. Whereunto the Holy Ghost also it is written to us, for after that he has said before, This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, said the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them, and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offerings for sin. Okay? Yes, Hebrews chapter 10, 1 through, chapter 10, verses 1 through 39. This chapter, the author emphasizes the finality of Christ's sacrifice by contrasting it with the lack of finality of the Old Testament system of law and sacrifices. Christ's, Christ's redemption needs no repetition and no supplementation. Therefore, a rejection of his sacrifice is final and unforgivable. Chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereon too perfect. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of the sins every year, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls or goats should take away sins. The Mosaic law with the Levitical priests and their continual and inadequate offerings was a shadow of Christ's coming and once for all offering. Okay. See, we have a little issue here with the video. I'm going to try to fix it. Yeah, so hopefully that's a little bit better. Um, Now we're going to look at the verse, chapter 10, verse 5. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he said, Sacrifice and offerings thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. He cometh, means Christ comes. Body representing the whole, replacing ears, representing a part. The complete submission is meant. Let's look at Psalms chapter 40, verse 6. Psalms chapter 40, verse 6. I need heads up. We're going to be looking at a lot of chapters, a lot of different books and chapters. Okay. While we're turning to chapter 40, Psalms chapter 40, verse 6. Yeah, 10 has a lot of referring to and from different books and verses, so we're going to be busy doing that. That's why I'm only doing one chapter today. Okay. Psalms chapter 40, verse 6. Sacrifice and offerings thou didst not desire. Mine ears hast thou opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings hast thou not required. Mine ears hast thou opened, and expressions signifying obedience, based either on the custom piercing of earlobes as a sign of voluntary perpetual service. You can find that in more information on that in Exodus chapter 21, verse 6. Or on the idea of hearing what God says. And you see that in Isaiah chapter 50, verses 4 through 5. Instead of the external ceremony, only David realizes that God wants his heart. In fact, he is saying, Here I am, to do what is prescribed to me as my duty in the law, but to do it from the heart. Okay, let's look at Hebrews. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10. Go back to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 10. By the which we will our sacrifice through the offering and the body of Jesus Christ once for all. By the which will, by Christ doing, the will of God becoming I'm sorry, folks. By the which will, by Christ doing, the will of God is becoming the sacrifice for sin, sanctifying or set apart in our position before God. Okay. We're going to look at Hebrews. I'm going to turn down my volume here so we don't have it going off while we're doing the Bible study. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 12 and 13. But the man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sin forever, sat down on the right hand of God, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. Though exalted and honored, now on the right hand of God, ruling over his enemies, awaiting his second coming. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 14. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 14. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 14. For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sacrificed. Perfected in the sense of making acceptable to God, who are sanctified. And you'll see that in verse 10, which we just covered. Okay, let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 16 and 17. This is the covenant that I will make with them after these days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. And their sins are iniquities will I remember no more. For this Old Testament quotation, which you'll see in Jeremiah 31, verses 33 and 34. Let's take a quick look at that. Let's take a real quick look at that. Jeremiah, marketplace in Hebrews chapter 10, and let's go to Jeremiah 30, chapter 31. Verses 33 and 34. Jeremiah 31, verses 33 and 34. Okay. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Lord. I will put my law in the inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, the least of them unto the greatest of them, said the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. Okay, let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10, verses 16 to 17. Okay, actually, let's go to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 20. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 20. Oh, actually, no, I got ahead of myself here. This next section is parenthetical warning. Don't despise Christ. And this section is chapter 10, verses 19 through 39. Parenthetical warning. Don't despise Christ. In this chapter, that's a section for we'll read, which is chapter 10, verse 19 through 39. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, which he had consecrated for us, though the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having an high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in the full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching. For if we sin wilfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for on judgment and fiery indignation which shall devour the adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy, who hath troubled under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant, wherewith he was sacrificed, an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. For we know him that has said, Vengeance belongeth unto me, I recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. But call to remembrance the former days in which after ye were eliminated, ye endured a great fight of afflictions, partly while ye were made a gazing stock, both by the reproaches and afflictions, and partly while ye become in compassions of them that were so used. For ye had compassions of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the not spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have the heaven is a better and enduring substances. Cast not away therefore your conscience, which hath great recompense of reward. For ye have need of patience that, after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto the perdition, but of them that believe not, that believe to the saving of the soul. I'm sorry. Um. Okay. Now let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 20. By a new and living way which he hath concentrated for us, through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. A new and living way. Christ is that way. And that you can see in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. So let's take a look at Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our professions. Okay, let's look at Hebrews chapter 6, verse 20. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 20. Whither the forerunner is for us entered, even Jesus made a high priest forever after the order of the Melchizedek. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 7, verse 24 and 25. But this man, because of the continuance ever hath an unchangeable priesthood, wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. Now let's look at John chapter 14, verse 6. John chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And as I kept saying, the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ. You have to walk that narrow, hard, rocky path that is very dangerous, treacherous to get to Jesus. He's the door. He's the only way. You have to get through him to get to heaven. Don't take that short, wide, easy path. That's not the way to get to heaven. You have to work. Not only do you need to ask God for forgiveness and get saved, but you also have to Do what God called you to do. God has called me to come here and serve everyone around the world by using this group to reach out, and by also using three other platforms besides Facebook: Instagram, YouTube, and Rumble. So I'm doing the best I can to serve the Lord by spreading the word and trying to help people find salvation and help them learn the Bible, help on the way to heaven. Okay, let's go back to Hebrews chapter 20. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 20. The torn veil opening the way to the Holy of Holiness symbolizes Christ's flesh, body on the cross, which opens the access to God for us. Let's look at Matthew chapter 27, verse 51. Matthew chapter 27. Matthew 27. I know, I'm a little slow. You guys are probably already there. Verses 51. Matthew chapter 27, verse 51. I'll be mark your place in the other section. Hebrews 27, verse 51. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. Veil, they're talking about the curtain that separates different rooms in the temple. Okay, let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10. And we're going to look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23. Let us hold fast the professions of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. The profession of our faith means literally the confession of our hope. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. And let us consider one another to provoke unto the love and to good works. To provoke, to stir up to an incitement of paroxysm, and of love of good works. To understand how strong the Greek word is, see its use. Okay, let's look in Acts 15:39. Let's look at Acts. Acts chapter 15. Verses 39. And the contention was so sharp between them that they departed asunder one from the other. And so Barabbas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus. And do we have any information on that one? They departed asunder and from the other. Here is an example of the separation because of personality or particularly not doctrine, and it seemed to be the only solution to the problem. God brought good out of it, and the two missionary teams were sent out. At Barnabas' continued interest in John, Mark rescued him from possible uselessness. Okay. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. Okay. We're talking about the sharp contentions. And we see where it says stirred. Let's look at Acts 17, verse 16. Acts 17, verse 16. And while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. Okay, we got no fish in that one. And let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, talking about provoked. 1 Corinthians, this is the New Testament. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. Doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. Okay. And provoke. Okay, that was provoked. Now let's look at Ephesians 6:4, and it's about provoke. Ephesians in the New Testament, verses 6. If you remember that one, because we did that one but book last time, just before this one. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. And ye, Father, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Provoke not means do not nag or arbitrarily assert authority. Okay, now let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little harsh again. Verse 25. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25. Not forsaking the assembling ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more, as ye see the day approaching. The assembling of ourselves together means the gathering of Christians for worship and edification, the day of Christ's coming. Let's take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 13. Every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. Quality is not quantity of works is the basis of judgment. Let's look at the Philippines chapter 1 verse 10. The Philippians, here we go. Philippians chapter 1, which I can't seem to flip right, verse 10. That ye may approve things that are excellent, that ye may sincere and without offense to the day of Christ. Approve things that are excellent. He's talking about the different date between highest matters and side ensues, sincere and without offense, but are pure and blameless. Okay, let's go to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26. No, I'm not drinking so I'm drinking water. I know better. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26. For if we sin wilfully after that we have received the knowledge of truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins. Sin wilfully, the background is the defiant sin of Numbers, chapter 15, verses 30 and 31. Let's take a look at Numbers. Okay, it's the fourth chapter, Numbers, in the Old Testament. It's the fourth book, Numbers, chapter 15. Fourth chapter, chapter 15, verses 30 and 31. But the soul that doeth aught presumptuously, whether he be born in the land of stranger, the same reproacheth the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Because he hath despised the word of the Lord, and hath broken his commandment, that soul shall utterly be cut off, of his iniquity shall be upon him. Numbers chapter 15, verse 30 to 31, it talks about non-propitiatory offerings, only judgment, awaiting the one who sinned presumptuously, literally with a high hand, with a raised, clenched fist, and defiance of God and his commands. We'll see that in Exodus chapter 14, where the same word is used. Let's look in Exodus chapter 14, verse 8. Exodus 14, verse 8. And the Lord hardened the hearts of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. The children of Israel went out with an high hand. Wait, did I say that right? Yeah, 8. With a high hand. It's confident and defiance of the Pharaoh. Okay, let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26. For which there are no propitiatory offerings, there remaineth no more sacrifices for sin. If a person rejects the truth of Christ except for sin, there is no other sacrifice for sin available, and no other way to come to God. Only judgment remains. Let's look at verse 27. But a certain people looking for a judgment that fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. Okay, that's looking for means prospect, fiery indignations, a furious fire. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 29. Of how much sore punishment suppose shall he be through worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant, wherewith he was sacrificed, an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. Done despite unto means insulted or outraged. The three indictments specified in the verse describes the enormity of the sin of unbelief. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 30. These are quotes from the Deuteronomy. Okay. For we know him that has said, vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, said the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. So, after saying that, let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy, that's right at the beginning. 5th book, right after Numbers. Right after Numbers. Deuteronomy chapter 37. Close, but not quite there. I know I'm probably a lot slower than you are flipping through this. Okay, I somehow messed up. 34. Deuteronomy 32, not 37. Deuteronomy 32. verses 35 and 36. To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time. For the day of their calamity is at hand, and the thing that shall come upon them make haste. For the Lord shall judge his people, and repent himself for his servants, when he seeth that their power is gone, and there is none shut up or left. Let's look at Psalms chapter 135. Psalms 135. Oh, I'm almost there already. I'm surprised. Whoop. Verse 14. For the Lord will judge his people, and he will repent himself concerning his servants. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 32. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 32. But call to remembrance the former days in which, after ye were illuminated, ye endured a great fight of afflictions. A great fight of afflictions means struggling with the sufferings. So that means suffering of your sins. You're struggling right from wrong. Okay, let's go to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 33. Partly whilst ye were made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly while she became compassion of them that were so used. A gazing stock means being publicly exposed to. In other words, your sins were made public. Okay, let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 34. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 34. For ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. Of me in bonds means a better reading is on the prisoners. Some Christians apparently have been imprisoned for their faith, whereas others had experienced the spoilings, means confiscations of their possessions. Let's look at chapter 36. Verse 36. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 36. For ye have need of the patience that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. Patience means endurance. You might have to wait a long time before you might receive the promise. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 37. Yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. The quotation is from Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3. That's near the end of the Old Testament. I'll give the correct. They only give me an abbreviation, so let me quickly look it up, make sure I got it right. The pronunciation. How did I get in the... Habakkuk. Yeah, Habakkuk. Book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. It's a very small book. I think there's only like 3 chapters in it, so it's very easily missed. It's near the end of the Old Testament, near Matthew, chapter 2, verse 3. It's right next to Nahum, which is also a small book. Okay, so we're looking at Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but the end it shall speak and not lie. Do it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come and will not tarry. The fulfillment will come in God's appointed time, basically, is what that verse is talking about. Let's look at, let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 38. Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. Okay. This quotation is from Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Behold, the soul which he lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. His soul, the shelter's soul, is in contrast. The just shall live, enjoy deliverance and abundance of life by his faith, or better faithfulness, moral steadfastness. A person who has faith is a person who trusts, and who can be trusted. The quote from Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4 is used to teach a person who has been made righteous by God, the just, live and survive the coming ordeal by faith. The believer trusts God in everything. Is it also quoted in everything which you see in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, but it's also quoted in Romans chapter 1, verse 17. Let's take a look at Romans chapter 1. Told you to be a lot of flipping around today. A lot later than I expected. Romans chapter 1, verse 17. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as is written, the just shall live by faith. And let's look at Galatians chapter 3, verse 11. Galatians chapter 3. Galatians chapter 3, verse 11. For that no man is justified by law in the sight of God. This is evident, for the just shall live by faith. What Paul uses to teach that the one who righteous by faith rather than by works shall live. Paul's emphasis is on salvation by faith. This writer's is on living by faith. And then we're going to end chapter 10. Thursday, we're going to start with Hebrews chapter 11. So go ahead and read chapter 11, get familiar with it, and we'll go over chapter 11 Thursday. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Thank you, God our Father, for letting us be together today for Bible study. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge through your word, through the Holy Bible. I pray for those lost souls that need to be reached. And as Christians, as we grow, let us witness to them. Help bring them to salvation, so they may come to heaven. I pray for those that have lost their lives to cancer and other serious ailments. And I pray, Lord, that they're up there in heaven with you. We know, Lord, that there's no more suffering. You call them back. We want them to get well, but that was not what you wanted. It was their time, Lord, for you to call them home, leaving their old bodies here, their old crippled bodies out here. Took them home, gave them new bodies with no suffering, no cancer, no serious ailments, no broken bones, no sores. Their bodies are perfect, walking the golden roads there in heaven, waiting for us to come when you call us. I pray, Lord, that you look after us while we're here on earth in flesh. Help guide us. Protect us from evil, Lord. Catch us when we start to sway in our tongue or interactions. Let's be examples as Christians by walking the faith of the Lord, walking his footsteps. So I pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Well, I think that chapter 10 was a good Bible study. I'm glad I decided to do that all by itself because that was almost an hour. And as you can tell my voice, it's time for me to rest it. I'm getting raspy. So I wish everyone a good evening. God bless you. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you Thursday. Don't forget tomorrow at the same time here, 7 a.m. Central Time here in America. I will be live streaming my church service, Independent Bible Baptist Church, here in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And I hope to see you there watching. So please come watch our church service. God bless you. Have a good evening.